He threw a massive catered party on my private property, and then looked me right in the eye and told me it never happened. My HOA president, the man we elected to uphold the rules and protect our community, thought he was untouchable. He figured I was just another homeowner he could bully and lie to. What he didn't know was that I was already recording. He didn't realize his biggest mistake wasn't throwing a party on my land. His biggest mistake was messing with the wrong homeowner. I'm going to walk you through every single step I took to expose his corruption and make sure he faces real consequences for his actions. This isn't just a story about a bad neighbor. It's a story about the abuse of power and a blueprint for how you can take that power back. To really get the sheer nerve of what he did, you need a picture of where we live. This isn't a grid of cookie-cutter houses. Our community is a mix of standard suburban homes and a few larger, multi-acre lots on the edge of the development. I'm one of the lucky ones. I've lived here for about 5 years on one of those larger lots. It's about 3 acres, and it backs up onto a beautiful stretch of undeveloped woods. It's my little slice of paradise, and it's why I moved here. The back acre, where this all went down, is intentionally private, separated from my house by a line of mature oak trees. Our Homeowners Association, or HOA, has always been, let's call it, active. You know the type. A little too worried about the exact shade of beige your trim is painted. For the most part, it was just minor stuff. But in the last 2 years, ever since our new president was elected, things got different. Friendly reminders turned into aggressive violation notices. Community meetings became his personal courtroom, where he'd publicly shame people for tiny infractions. He's one of those guys who carries himself with this air of unearned authority, like he peaked in high school and has been trying to get that feeling of power back ever since. He just loves the title. My own dealings with him before all this were small, but telling. I did put in a request to plant a little vegetable garden on the side of my house, totally hidden from the street. It was denied with no explanation. When I tried to ask him about it at a cookout, he patted me on the shoulder and said, "The board's decisions are final," then just walked away. He brushed me off. It was frustrating, but I'm not a confrontational person, so I let it go. Big mistake. I learned that when you give a bully an inch, he doesn't just take a mile. He takes your entire backyard and throws a party on it. The red flags were there all along. I just didn't realize what they were leading to. It was a Saturday night in late August. I got home around 11 p.m. after celebrating a friend's birthday, and as soon as I pulled into my driveway, something felt off. I could hear this faint, thumping beat. At first, I figured it was a distant concert or a neighbor having people over. But when I got out of the car, I could smell it. That specific smell of a big, catered event. Grilled food, perfume, and something else. Entitlement. The sound was coming from the back of my property. Not a neighbor's yard. My yard. I have a little path that goes from my house, through the oak trees, and into the back acre. As I walked down it, the music got louder. It was a full-on DJ setup. And then I saw it. A full-blown, professionally organized event sprawling across the acre I'd spent years cultivating. There had to be at least 70 or 80 people. There was a long buffet table under a tent, staffed by people in uniform. There was a portable bar with 2 bartenders, and in the corner, a white tent with a line of people waiting to get into a photo booth. A freaking photo booth. On my land. Without my permission. I just stood there for a second, hidden by the trees, completely stunned. The shock quickly turned into a hot, rising anger. I saw luxury cars parked on the grass I water and mow so carefully. People were laughing, dancing, dropping plastic cups on my ground. And right in the middle of it all, holding court, was our HOA president. He was laughing, drink in hand, acting like the lord of the manor. My manor. My first instinct was to storm out there and just start screaming. But then, a colder, more methodical thought took over. Screaming would just create a scene. It would be my word against his and his 80 friends. He'd deny it, twist it, and paint me as the crazy homeowner. So, I took a deep breath, pulled out my phone, and started recording. I walked the perimeter, sticking to the shadows. I filmed everything: the DJ, the catering, the photo booth. I took long pans of the crowd, making sure to get clear shots of the president's face. I zoomed in on license plates. Every single detail was a piece of evidence. I felt like a spy in my own backyard. After about 15 minutes, saving the videos to the cloud as I went, I knew I had enough. It was time for the confrontation. I walked back to my house, my heart pounding with a righteous, controlled fury. I put my phone in my pocket, still recording audio, and walked back down the path, this time making sure they could see me. I stepped out from the trees and walked right toward him. It took a second for anyone to notice. The music was loud. I had to walk right up to his little circle. "Mr. President," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. He turned, a look of annoyance quickly shifting to a practiced smile. "Hey there! Glad you could make it," he boomed, like I was an invited guest. "I don't think I'm on the list," I said, keeping my voice level. "This is my property." The smile didn't fade, but his eyes tightened. This was the moment, the lie. He glanced around at the party, then back at my face, and let out a little dismissive chuckle. "Oh, I think you're mistaken," he said, loud enough for his friends to hear. "This is HOA common area. We have it reserved for the annual summer gala. Great for community spirit." I was floored. He wasn't just denying it. He was trying to rewrite my property deed with his words. "This is not common area," I said, my voice getting firmer. "This is the back acre of my private property. I have the survey to prove it. You are all trespassing." The mood in his circle shifted. People started looking back and forth between us. His folksy president mask was cracking. "Now, let's not make a scene," he said, lowering his voice. "You've clearly had a misunderstanding about your property lines. Common mistake on these larger lots?" "There is no misunderstanding," I said. "I am telling you, as the legal owner of this land, that you and your party are trespassing. You had no right." He stepped closer, his voice now a low growl. "I am the HOA president. I know what is and isn't HOA property. You're making a fool of yourself. Now, you can either enjoy the party or go home, but you're not going to ruin this for everyone." That was it. The threat. He was so used to people backing down that he thought he could bully me on my own land. "I have documented this entire event," I said slowly and clearly. "I have video, and I am telling you one last time to shut this down and get off my property before I call the sheriff." His face went pale. The word video was the one thing that broke through his arrogance. He looked around and saw that the party was grinding to a halt as people stared. He knew he'd lost control. He shot me a look of pure hatred that said, "You will regret this." "Fine," he spat. He turned to the DJ. "All right, everyone. Looks like we have a party pooper. Time to wrap it up." He tried to frame me as the villain, but the damage was done. The lie was exposed. As people started packing up, I just stood my ground, my phone still recording everything. In that moment, I knew this was no longer about a party. This was about a man who believed he was above the law. The next morning, the aftermath looked even worse in the daylight. My lawn was chewed up by tire tracks. Trash was everywhere. Someone even left a high heel stuck in the soft dirt near my flower beds. I spent 2 hours cleaning up, and with every piece of garbage I picked up, my anger cooled into pure resolve. This wasn't just about trespassing. It was a pattern. The dismissiveness, the arbitrary rules, the entitlement. It all clicked. Johnson's lie wasn't a panic response. It was his default setting. He believed his title gave him the authority to create his own reality. He saw the HOA not as a service, but as his personal kingdom. I sat at my kitchen table rewatching the videos. The evidence was damning. His face, his voice. I had him. But what was the end game? I could report him to the HOA board, but his allies would just circle the wagons. I could sue him for damages, but that felt too small. A civil penalty he'd probably figure out how to pay with HOA funds anyway. No, that wasn't enough. It wouldn't stop him. The title of this video isn't "How I Got My HOA President to Pay for Landscaping." It's "How I'm Sending My Corrupt HOA President to Prison." Now, that sounds extreme, I know, but I realized that a man this comfortable with lying, trespassing, and abusing his authority probably isn't a first-time offender. The party wasn't the real crime. It was a symptom. And the first place my mind went was the one place where HOAs have the most power and the least oversight: the money. That's when I made my decision. I was done being a victim. I was going to be an investigator. He messed with the wrong homeowner. I wasn't going to be emotional. I was going to be quiet, methodical, and relentless. I was going to build a case so airtight that he couldn't lie or bully his way out of it. This was no longer about revenge. This was about justice. My war started not with a bang, but with a binder. A big 3-inch binder labeled "The Incident." I printed stills from the video, transcribed the audio, and documented all the damage. My next step was to become an expert on the rules. I downloaded everything from the HOA website, the CC&Rs, the bylaws, all the meeting minutes from the last 2 years. I spent a whole weekend with a highlighter, reading every boring page. I was looking for 2 things: rules he had broken and rules that gave me, as a homeowner, power. I found them. First, the trespass. Our CC&Rs clearly map out the common areas. My property wasn't on that map. Strike 1. Second, the party expenditure. The bylaws said any event costing over $500 required a board vote. There was no record of a vote for this party, which clearly cost thousands. Strike 2. This meant he either bypassed the board or, and this is when the gears really started turning, he paid for it in a way he didn't want anyone to see. Most importantly, I found the section on homeowner rights. The bylaws and my state's laws guarantee homeowners the right to inspect the association's financial records. That was the key. I drafted a formal letter, citing the specific bylaw and state statute, requesting copies of all financial records for the past 2 years, expense reports, bank statements, invoices, the whole works. I sent it via certified mail. A week went by. Nothing. After the legal limit of 10 business days passed, I sent another letter, reminding him of his legal obligation. A week later, I got a 1-page budget summary and a letter from him saying that for privacy reasons, detailed records weren't available. He was stonewalling, and he was breaking the law. My suspicions were confirmed. I consulted with an attorney who specialized in HOA law. She confirmed his denial was illegal and helped me draft a much stronger letter on her firm's letterhead. That got his attention. 3 days later, a big, messy box of papers landed on my doorstep. I spent the next 2 weeks at my dining room table, cross-referencing everything with spreadsheets and a mountain of coffee. That's when I found the patterns. There were huge recurring payments to a company called Greenscape Solutions LLC for vague common area maintenance. I did a quick search in the state's business registry. The company was registered 18 months ago. The registered agent, the person legally responsible for the company? It was his wife. Strike 3. He was using our HOA dues to pay a shell company owned by his wife for work that was either never done or was massively overbilled. This wasn't just a breach of his duty. This was embezzlement, a criminal offense. I had the evidence, but I was still just one person. I started talking to my neighbors, quietly. Not, "Hey, our president is a crook," but, "Have you had any weird interactions with the HOA lately?" The floodgates opened. I met an elderly widow who'd been hit with repeated $100 fines, the maximum allowed in my state as of 2025, because the paint on her garden gnome was supposedly flaking. I talked to a young family who was denied permission to build a small treehouse, with the president citing a visual obstruction rule that didn't exist. There was a clear pattern of harassment. I created a private email list and shared my story, and then theirs. People were fed up, but afraid to act alone. Seeing they weren't the only ones gave them courage. My one-person investigation had become a community movement. Then, something amazing happened. I got an anonymous email from a former board member. They told me to look at the Special Projects Fund, an account the president had sole authority over and used as his personal slush fund. They said the money for the party almost certainly came from there. But the real tip was this. Look for an invoice from Coastal Marine Services from 6 months ago for erosion repair at the community pond. I dug back through the box of papers. It took hours, but I found it. A single invoice for $15,000 for structural maintenance. And attached to the back, probably by accident, was the work order. It wasn't for the community pond. The work order was for the installation of a brand new boat lift at a private marina. And the address on the work order? It was the president's lakeside cabin, 100 miles away. I had him. This was it. Irrefutable proof. He had used $15,000 of our money to install a private boat lift for his weekend toy. I held the invoice in my hand. This was the smoking gun, a $15,000 payment for erosion repair that was actually for a luxury boat lift at his vacation home. This went far beyond a civil dispute. This was a felony. The title of this video was no longer just an idea. It was a plan. It wasn't just about exposing him. It was about doing it in a way that guaranteed consequences. I had two fronts, the court of public opinion in our community and the actual court of law. First, the community. The annual HOA meeting was in 3 weeks. Perfect. It was the one time all year he had to face the homeowners. I started working with my new coalition. We drafted a petition to recall him from the board, citing gross misconduct. We went door to door, not with anger, but with facts. We showed them the evidence of the shell company and the stories of harassment. We got the signatures we needed in less than a week. Second, the legal front. This was too big to handle alone. With the boat lift invoice, I went back to my attorney. Her eyes went wide. She said we had enough to go to the authorities. We packaged every piece of evidence, the party videos, the stonewalled requests, the corporate filings, the sworn statements, and the boat lift invoice, into a neat, chronological narrative. We made an appointment with the Economic Crimes Division of the local prosecutor's office. The plan was set. We'd use the annual meeting for the public exposure. Then, the next morning, we would hand the entire case over to the district attorney. We would expose him to his neighbors and the law in the span of 24 hours. The aftermath was swift. The remaining board members, desperate to restore trust, immediately hired a forensic accountant for a full audit. A new accountable board was elected. The next morning, my attorney and I met with a prosecutor from the Economic Crimes Unit. We handed over the binder. They were impressed and launched a formal criminal investigation. Real-world justice isn't like on TV. It takes time. The investigation and grand jury process took months. But just last week, I got the call from the DA's office. The grand jury returned an indictment. Our former president has been formally charged with multiple counts of felony grand theft and embezzlement. The prosecutor says the evidence is so overwhelming that a conviction is likely. He is currently out on bail, awaiting trial. Justice isn't always fast, but if you are methodical, it arrives. Our community is already healing. There's a sense of trust that hasn't been here in years. The reign of the petty tyrant is over. So, what's the lesson here? First, document everything. Your phone is your best tool. Photos, videos, emails. Evidence is your power. Don't let it be your word against theirs. Second, know the rules better than they do. Your HOA's bylaws and your state's laws are your shield and your sword. Read them. Understand them. State laws often grant homeowners significant rights to financial transparency. Use them. And finally, you are probably not alone. If you're feeling bullied by your HOA, chances are your neighbors are too. Talk to them. Build a coalition. There is incredible power in a community united for a common cause. This whole journey started with me feeling angry and violated, but it ended with empowerment. It taught me that one person, armed with the truth and a lot of determination, can take on a corrupt system and win. You don't have to be a lawyer or an investigator. You just have to be a homeowner who's been pushed too far. If you've ever had a nightmare experience with an HOA, share your story in the comments. Let's create a space where we can support each other. Thank you for watching.